By the time winter approached in 1914 and the chill set in, countless soldiers were living in misery in the trenches, while tens of thousands had already died. Then, on Christmas Eve of the same year, a remarkable thing happened on the Western Front of the First World War. British machine gunner Bruce, later a prominent cartoonist, wrote about it in his memoirs. He was spending the holiday eve shivering in the muck, trying to keep warm. He had spent a good part of the past few months fighting the Germans. He was miles and miles from home, cold, wet, and covered in mud. There didn't seem the slightest chance of leaving except in an ambulance. Then Bruce noticed noise. The Germans were singing carols as it was Christmas Eve. In that darkness, some of the British soldiers began to sing back. Suddenly Bruce recalled, "We heard the confused shouting from the other side." We all stopped to listen, and the shout came again. The voice was from an enemy soldier, speaking in English with a strong German accent. He was saying, "Come over here." One of the British sergeants answered, "You come halfway, I come halfway." What happened next would in the years to come stun the world and make history. But before that, thousands of years ago, while there was another prospective war, God had continued to announce his peace plan for a new beginning, peace between God and man. God's people had been in the wilderness for some time after the exodus from Egypt, and a king named Balak wanted to attack them. So he asked a fortune teller called Balaam for assistance. Balaam sinned by building temples and offering sacrifices to demons, and also plotting against God's people to corrupt them. And yet, God wanted to bear witness to the truth before all the nations, even through a fortune teller. So he spoke his parable and said, "I see him but not now. I see him but he's not near. A star will arise from Jacob, and a scepter will arise from Israel." He saw him in the spirit of prophecy, but he was far, far from him, as more than 1500 years remained before Incarnation. And this prophecy was recorded in the books of the people of the East, during which the Magi recognized the born king when the star appeared to them in the East. Fast forward a few more years, and God explained more of his plan to another prophet, Isaiah. Though he started by calling the nature to witness how humanity degraded to something even less than animals, as St. John Chrysostom once said, Isaiah describes a bleak picture of humanity whose law is war, violence, selfishness, and greed. One nation annihilates the other, as he says, "No man spares his brother. He devours on the right and is hungry. He devours on the left and is not satisfied. They will each eat the flesh of his own arm." And God showed that humanity no longer benefited from the disciplining of the Lord, but they continued in their wicked ways. As he says, "Why should you be stricken anymore? You will revolt more and more. The whole head is sick, and the whole heart faints." And that begs the question, if the reason behind the Incarnation was the redemption of the fallen humanity and the renewal of our corrupted nature, then why did God create man, though he knew how corrupted he would get, and how many innocent people would get hurt by those whom their hands are full of blood? Well, as he says in his book, despite all this, his anger has not turned away, and his hand is still outstretched. See, man is the child of God's great love. God created man so he would enjoy the blessings of existence in the divine presence. Before he created him, he prepared everything for him. He created the sun and the moon for him, and decorated the universe with the stars. He prepared the earth for him, creating plants and decorating them with flowers and roses for him. He created for him fish, birds, and animals of all kinds, shapes, and colors, in a way that captivates the mind. And God saw all of this was good, and then he created man. He created him in his image and likeness, in existence, mind, and life. He created him in the image that he would take for himself in the fullness of time. As he says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Man is God's example of creativity, freedom of will, power, and immortality. And when he created him, he said, "Very good." And though he has fallen and ruined the image, God didn't limit his freedom. He didn't force him into living a holy life, turning him into a puppet. But he wanted to fix the image. He wanted him to choose the holy life. And because God doesn't give up his fatherhood, even if we give up our sonship, he couldn't have just annihilated Adam and Eve and created a new human being. As he says, I have nurtured children and brought them up, but they have rebelled against me. So throughout the book of Isaiah, he reveals his peace plan and says, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. But why would the Lord himself incarnate and take our nature? And the reason behind this is his love. As he says in his book, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. So, why didn't God just forgive us? After all, that's what Christianity teaches, to forgive others. And wouldn't you forgive someone you love? As that question is very charged and would need books to answer, we'll only give a brief example, and we'll attach the documents and references used in the description below for a deeper look. If we assume a criminal appears before a judge to be sentenced for committing a murder, and all the reasons for his conviction are available, is it correct for the judge to pardon him out of the mercy of his heart? Or because the killer committed the murder for the first time in his life? What if he pardoned the thief, the rapist, and so on without a punishment? What could happen in the city of such a judge who forgives all mistakes and does not apply justice? But God had always planned to take it on himself and take the first step to fixing our image, pay our debt, and renew our nature. So in the fullness of time, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father. And the next step would be ours, to accept him and become the children of God, as he promised to all who did receive him. To those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God. Going back to World War I, something that would later be called the Christmas Truce, enemy soldiers began to climb nervously out of the trenches and to meet in the no man's land that separated the armies. There were handshakes, words of kindness, and even a soccer game. This Christmas, the celebration of love, managed to bring together enemies as friends. The British soldier Bruce couldn't believe his eyes. Here they were, the actual German soldiers, yet there wasn't an atom of hate on either side. For those who participated, it was surely a welcome break from the hell they had been enduring. When the war had begun just 6 months earlier, most soldiers figured it would be over quickly and they would be back home with their families for the holidays. Not only would the war drag on for 4 more years, but it would prove to be the bloodiest conflict ever up to that time. Today, a memorial stands in England commemorating the Christmas Truce. On the 100th anniversary in 2014, the English and German soccer teams staged a friendly match in remembrance of the soldiers' soccer game. As for Britain's Bruce, he summed up the historic moment this way: "Looking back at it, I wouldn't have missed that unique and weird Christmas day for anything."